everybody. Welcome to Primetime Muscle. I'm Tim Wilkins, along with Hall of Fame bodybuilder Chris Cormier and super promoter and IFBB pro judge Tara Kilkenny. Hey, guys.
How you doing, Tim?
How's it going?
As always, great. They fed us. We've had 9 cups of coffee. We're ready to rock out.
I like that combination with the tie you got going on right there.
Yeah. I tried to be a compliment to each of you to kind of catch
a little swirl.
Yeah. Trying to catch your neck thickness and everything you told me is wrong with my physique and put it in one outfit.
Well, let's just say you could add muscular development to your upper chest and a little bit more detail on your back, and you should be at the Mr. Olympia in 2074.
Perfect. I'll be 123. That's hopefully there'll be a master.
It'll take some time.
Well, talking about the guys, we're covering all aspects of the sport as we always do, all divisions, but it's a big topic right now. And we talked about this just in a kind of an off-camera roundtable about a day ago. Are the competitors using Synthol?
In my opinion, it's probably not even necessarily Synthol, but definitely doing a lot of side injecting that's unnecessary. Some of the stuff, it just unnecessary, looks very odd, and not even humanly possible to even have a muscle develop like that. Like some muscles are normally flat if you look at the anatomy, but actually now it's like 3D or it's, you know, something like that. Some is just unnecessary. I think it really blurs the physique. And I think you can look a lot better. I mean, you know, I'm not gonna say that it's something that can just be totally wiped out, but just calm down, have a little like, you know, I don't know, have some pride about you that you're gonna gain some muscle in the gym, not just in the bathroom.
Now, let's back up. What is Synthol?
Well, so basically you're injecting oils that get the muscle, you know, inflamed, right? I mean, it's as simple as that. It takes away the separation, the natural look of the muscle. We are judges, we're trained to see exactly how a muscle, you know, you look at an anatomy picture of a human body, and then you see these injections that just project the human body completely, you know, it's abnormal. And I don't think there's a lot of people using it. I judge shows, and if I see it, it's called an imbalance of your physique, right? If your upper body is a lot bigger than your lower body, is an imbalance. If you decide to do an injection on whatever, your forehead, your shoulders, and it looks like an imbalance on your physique, you're going to be marked down. We've had cases that happened, and people have been marked down. It's the destruction of your physique. And I don't think any bodybuilder should ever do it. All the bodybuilders that have been in the industry for decades say, don't do it. You're destroying your physique. The judges will see it. You'll be marked down. That's not bodybuilding. I can't emphasize enough that this is not supposed to happen. Like Chris said, go to the gym, have some pride, and lift weights.
Well, Chris also said, if you look at a body part like a rear delt and it should have a nipple on it, like it looks like a breast implant,
yeah,
you've done yourself a disservice.
Tim, this year, 2022, I judged a competitor. It wasn't a bodybuilder. It was in another category. And he could have won the show. He could have won the show. His conditioning was great. He had all the tools to win the show. And he ended up in 12th or 13th because he had an imbalance on both of his shoulders. Was that worth it?
No.
Was that worth it? I mean, you know, it's just, I can't understand the thought process that you think that you're going to inject something on your body, create this inflammation, and hope the judges don't see it when you're actually destroying your physique.
Yes, and you're destroying the muscle. One of the muscles that a lot of people like to do is the calves. The calves is one of the worst places you can do it because it's slowly going to damage that muscle. That muscle is going to disintegrate and be actually nothing in another year or two, or you know, or something like that. So if your calves is very high, you just have high calves. Just leave it. Just train it.
Go home and smack your mama.
Yeah, because you got 3 inches length and 3 inches width. We know something else is rotten in Denmark, and we see that. That's not humanly possible.
So that's a really important point. What kind of damage are these guys doing to their health and wellness long term for a gain in 16 weeks that they couldn't have gotten through seated calf races or donkey races with somebody riding their back?
Well, listen, let's go back in history and let's look at one of the greatest physiques of all times, Milor Sarcev, right? You look at a picture of Milos Sarcev in the 90s, you're talking about a human statue. And Milos came publicly in 2022 and he said, listen, at one point in my career, I did use Synthol and I destroyed my body. My biceps was not even moving. And I love the fact that he was honest, and I give him a lot of credit, because you're talking about one of the greatest physiques of all times, compromising his arm, and he said it looked like a brick, it didn't move. And judges at that point came up to him and said, what are you doing? You're destroying your body. What better example can we give to the young competitors? One of the greatest physiques of all times, admitting, I made a mistake, you shouldn't do that, right? So the competitors have the guidance to go to the gym, lift weights, and create the perfect human anatomy. That's bodybuilding.
Yeah, so I actually, Terry, I actually use it in my calves before. That's how I know the damage is real. And not only that, when you get older, you need circulation. Guess what you're doing to the muscle? You're damaging all the nerves. You're not going to have the circulation through your nervous system is going to be all jacked up. And when you get older, you need that circulation, and that's where you're damaging. You see a lot of competitors today with a lot of damage in their back because they're actually pinning down the middle of the trapezius. You see the swollen. You see the trapezius swollen. Then you see the neck is very small and flat. Like, how did you build just in that small little area in your trapezius, not in the lower, not in the upper?
Well, you're still rocking a 19-inch neck, so I have no idea how you find shirts. But everything was developed on Chris. It is important to know, these guys need to know, this is a dangerous substance. You're damaging yourself more long-term than other things. But as a fan, an ardent fan of the sport, when you're looking at a pose down between the guys, how are we noticing who has site injected? What's the difference in appearance to a muscle?
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, in my opinion, you'll see, like you say, it'll look like a nipple in the middle of the delt. You'll see some parts that's, and then from show to show, you're seeing different development. You're seeing 3 months of work from the night show to from the day show to the night show. How are you building 3 different months worth of work from the morning to the night? That's what I look at. I look at the hamstrings. I look at the lack of definition, especially from the side.
Lack of lines.
Yeah, you should have lines through that hamstring when you hit that side of the quad.
So it wasn't an extra rice cake backstage or a gummy bear that his coach told him to take?
No, it looked like it's months and months. Like, it looked good 6 months of work you got put in from the first time you showed up on stage to the night show. Then all of a sudden you see the upper quads, you got the little lump, you got the middle head. Some are hitting all 3 heads. Some don't have any cross striations. You got striated glutes. You have no striations in your quads, and you got striated glutes. That's something wrong with that.
Looks like you got stung by a bee. It's an inflammation. It doesn't look normal. It doesn't look real. The judges are 10 feet away from your physique. We're trained to look at that. We're trained to see you walking on stage when you're not posing, when you're not hitting the pose. We're trained to look at all those things. Don't do it. Just don't do it. You're compromising your health. You're not looking better. Don't do it. It's a mistake. Go to the gym and lift weights.
Whenever we talk about this, I picture those things we see, the Instagram post or the old pictures from the magazines where someone in some foreign country has just injected Synthol into the bis and tris, and it's some weird, awkward sideshow swoop from top to bottom that doesn't even look like a muscle.
It's horrendous. It's dangerous. It shouldn't be done. Competitors need to look at themselves and say, I'm not going to do this. As a judge, I can attest that I have seen competitors that could have won a show and ended up on the 3rd call out because they had those imbalances on their physique. Don't do it.
Yes, and I think you can change, if you're going to change the shape of your bicep from show to show, change the shape of your quad development from show to show. Sometimes you got upper quads that's more developed. Then sometimes it's leaner in the upper quads and it's thicker on the bottom. How are you genetically, how are you doing that? Exactly.
Well, if you're doing it now or thinking about doing it, put that in the past. But for now, we're going to be talking about the future of bodybuilding and who those guys are going to be when we come back on Primetime Muscle.
You diet down, train hard, and supplement smart for months. When the time comes to step on stage, don't leave your tan to chance. Go with the pros. Pro Tan. #1 worldwide since 1987 and the official sponsor of the Olympia for the last 15 years. Don't step on stage without it. Pro Tan.
And we're back with Primetime Muscle, Tim Wilkins, Tarek El-Kindi, Chris Cormier, the real deal. All right, there was an era that you were in where there was only so many guys, and then you had to look to the future and say, who's coming up? We're doing that now. We're looking at who is the future Mr. Olympia.
Well, let's start with the last Mr. Olympia. If we look at Big Ramy and Brendan Curry and Hadi Choopan, I think Hadi had been competing for a while before he came. Brandon turned pro in 2008, and Ramy, he recently announced this might be one of his last years. So we got to look at the guy who placed fourth. We're talking about Hunter Labrada. Small waist, genetically gifted, and he's one of those hybrids because you can't just say he's an aesthetically pleasing guy with no mass. He's got mass and he's got a small waist. So, and he placed fourth. The hype is huge on Nick Walker, and he's one of the most confident guys. He's a mass monster, but he was behind Hunter. So we got to look at Hunter first, and then Nick Walker. And then you got in sixth place, William Bonac, which also can be considered a guy that might be in the end of his career, even though he just looked incredible at the Arnold. We got Ian Valliere in seventh place, who just won his fifth pro show in 2022. And then we got the X Factors, and we have so many, Tim. Who is this guy, Andrew Jacked? People are talking about him being on the first call out. If he's on the first call out after winning his pro debut, how good is he?
How good?
And then we got Blessing Awadibu, who just started his career and won 2 pro shows, right? So there's a lot of X factors. We're also going to talk about Rafael Brandao. Talk about lines. He's got great lines. He won 2 pro shows. Where is he going to end up? So this is a new generation coming up. But if you need to mention one name, the name is the guy who placed fourth. And that guy is Hunter Labrada.
Yes, Hunter, like I said, I saw him, up close and personal, posing in front of me. Very remarkable physique. He also posed at my competition this year. He is one that I was amazed with because of his posing connection. He has a torn pec. Let's just be honest. He has a torn pec, but he is one that's been able to hide his deficiencies for the most part on the stage. And I was just impressed with the way he was able to pose and not just show the weakness, just show his strength and not even put a whole lot of pressure on that pec to where it's going to clump up and you'll see, okay, his body is damaged. He's showing a remarkable ability. I'm sure his dad has a lot to do with that also.
We talk about genetics all the time, and get to normally see somebody's parents. But having Lee Labrada as your dad and having the win the day gym and like you were saying, 5 microwaves and 10 blenders around the corner with everything you want.
Right?
That's like looking over in the stands at some peewee quarterback and going, oh, that's his dad, Tom Brady. I mean, it's the best, one of the best of an entire era of bodybuilders. And he's the 2.0 to that, as a 3.0, the improvement on size by 4 inches and 100 pounds with all the tools and all the modern stuff.
You can see Lee Labrada's genetic on Hunter, but Hunter's a lot bigger. But if I were to point out the item that really makes Hunter Labrada special, and I give credit to his father, is how cerebral of a bodybuilder Hunter Labrada is at a young age. He's extremely intelligent, he's smart, he knows his weaknesses and his strengths. And being a smart bodybuilder is a great asset in today's age. He's not going to make any mistakes. He's going to continue to grow and continue to find his place in the bodybuilding world. And I think Hunter has a great chance to eventually fight for that title.
There's another really smart guy, Ian Valliere. We've seen him on the podcast. You've interviewed him. That guy's a student of the sport, not just him, but he's watching game film on the competition, wondering what do I have to do. And you didn't have the opportunity to do that because there was no YouTube, but you studied the other guys, or did you just not care and go head down?
Oh no, I studied everybody. I wanted to know how they were mentally. I wanted to know what their deficiencies were physically.
You ever try and crack anybody? You You ever try to make anybody break just for
sure, for sure. I remember before the Mr. USA, I waited like 2 hours at the weigh-ins just so I could say something to Dennis Newman. Just so I could say something to him, and then I left after that. So I'm not going to say what I said, but yeah, I waited 2 hours just to get into his head. I would do that a lot, even on the stage. I would back people down. You know, it's a little bit of Lee Haney style, backing down Flex Wheeler when we had a head-to-head to go for the Ironman. So yeah, getting into someone's mentality, that's all part of the gamesmanship and savvy veteran stuff.
So Nick Walker is what, 27, 28? How old is he?
I think he's 28 years old, and I had a chance to interview him. I had a chance to judge him when he was an amateur and on the Olympia stage. And it's just incredible the level of confidence this young man has. He's massive. He's huge. He knows that's the game he's going to play. He can outmass many of the guys in front of him, such as Brendan Curry, such as Hadi, such as Hunter Labrada. And he can be a bad comparison for Big Ramy, because if he's on that top final call out where Big Steve brought Big Ramy, Brandon, Hadi, and Hunter, if Nick Walker is on that call out, it takes a little bit of the impact that Ramy has as the only mass monster. And Nick Walker, if you talk to him right now, he's so confident. He's telling everybody, I'm going to win the Mr. Olympia.
One of my training partners is dead set that Nick Walker's going to win this year. And he's only given, what, 20, 30 pounds to Ramy?
Yeah.
It's not a lot.
He's a mass monster. He doesn't have the greatest lines, but he's so massively impressive that he can overpower people and eventually prevail.
So now Ramy steps out of the scene. Brandon eventually is going to step out of the scene. That's who's duking it out as far as who we have right now.
Yes, what I was going to say is something about Nick. He knows how to draw the crowd. He knows how to draw the attention on himself. That's one thing I noticed about his stage savvy is is up there. It's almost like Jay Cutler used to do. He would use the whole finger, the whole thing, but he he plays with the crowd, and I think that the crowd loves him. He's like one of the guys that the crowd is actually coming to see.
Anybody else in that past Nick Walker, Ian Valieri from last year or the year before that's looming? Maybe somebody took a year off last year that's looming in that 8 through 12.
Well, I gotta tell you, Justin Gonzalez, he was the surprise of the Mr. Olympia. A lot of times, as a judge, you sit there and you judge, first to, 10th place. But all judges are passionate about bodybuilding, and we're passionate about seeing people improving. Justin was incredible at the Mr. Olympia. I gotta give him a lot of credit. Now, there are guys that are true X factors. If you look at Akeem Williams, he was 6th place in the 2020 Mr. Olympia. He wasn't the same in 2021. Can he duplicate that effort in 2022? Talking about massive, small waist, round muscle bellies. And Chris is very close. He actually helped Akeem when Akeem was struggling mentally, didn't want to do bodybuilding anymore. If this young man nails his conditioning, the sky's the limit.
Yes, I had some close relations with him, and I feel like, he could have always done it. He can always improve a little bit more stuff on his physique still, even at this age. And I think, I think if he did the deep tissue work, got his body together physically, got some good training, improved the abs. I'd like to see a little bit more abs on this guy better, and start utilizing his attributes to the best of his ability.
Well, we're going to find out who this future is this year at the Olympia weekend in Las Vegas at the Zappos Theater. See if there's that shakeup. See if Nick can move up, Hunter can move up, or see if the other guys can defend. And then when they step down, that's when it's going to get interesting to see who fills those vacancies at that top 1 and 2 spot, including what you said about William Bonac, who near the end of his career.
Yeah, William Bonac really had an amazing showing at the Arnold Classic. Many people had him winning the Arnold Classic. They thought he was better than Brandon. Brandon is bigger, has more aesthetic pleasing lines, but the consistency in William Bonac's conditioning is incredible. Well, we got to look at the history of bodybuilding. I go back to the history of bodybuilding. It's not like the NFL that every year somebody comes up and possibly appears at the Super Bowl. We've had great dynasties. Lee Haney, we had Phil Heath, we had Arnold, we had Dorian Yates. Yeah. And Big Ramy is the champion. He's the champion. We're excited about the new guys. We love the new guys, but don't forget the history of bodybuilding. It's pretty conservative.
Very conservative. Well, we're going to find all that out this year, as well as, and we're hoping that Big Steve puts Blessing and Ian up against each other. But we're also going to talk about aesthetics, like you just mentioned, and who can make that jump from aesthetics to open, or is aesthetics and open one and the same when we come back?
People always ask how I got here. I was willing to work just a little harder than everyone else. Every damn day. If I can have hundreds of hours back, you know I'm gonna grab them. Spending hours prepping chicken, rice, and vegetables, F that. I rely on perfect nutrition. I rely on trifecta.
And we're back on Primetime Muscle with a very interesting topic. Can Reagan Grimes and Rafael Brandao be more than just aesthetic, as the guys have said, pretty boys on stage? Can they make that real big impact on the open class? Pretty boys.
Well, listen, a lot of people talk about these guys having great lines. They're good-looking guys. The women love them. They didn't want to be in Classic. Actually, Reagan Grimes won the New York Pro in Classic Physique, and then he transitioned back to bodybuilding. Rafael Brandao, from the beginning of his career, he said, I'm not doing Classic. I'm going to be in bodybuilding. The reality is these guys have made to the Mr. Olympia. Rafael Brandao this year won 2 pro shows, and Reagan Grimes won in Egypt. They're going back to the Mr. Olympia. But Tim, the question is, can these guys break into a first call out, make it to the top 10? I don't know. Rafael Brandao might have the best lines, and his conditioning is very good. Especially in his debut at the Arnold Classic, he was incredible there and got a first call out there. But so far, he's giving a lot of size. And we're living in an age where Big Ramy is where everybody is going. People want to get bigger so they can line up against Big Ramy. So he's not joining a generation where people are chasing Phil Heath. He's chasing now a mass monster. Reagan Grimes might have a little bit more muscle in certain areas, especially on the back. He's a little thicker than Rafael, but he doesn't have the lines. But again, they're both smaller guys with very good looking physiques. The key question is, have they added enough to crack the top 10?
Now, it's interesting to say smaller guys, because I know my wife's 5'10", and she gets backstage around the people that have won, and they're 5'6", 5'8", 5'9". These guys are both, I believe, 5'11". And one is 225, 235, and one is 245 on stage. So you're going up against a Big Ramy at 5'9", 300, and Nick Walker at 5'7", 5'8", and 275, 280, 290, depending on the day.
Yes, one thing I've noticed is both of these guys, incredible physiques, and we're talking about them because they're one of the best in the world. But in the off season, looking amazing, getting ready for the show, looking spot on, looking like something out of this world, and then showing up and being a little bit less impressive, in my opinion. That's where I think they need to make the jump, is to being what they're showing on the Instagram as opposed to what they get on stage with. That's where we're losing a little bit.
We'd all like the judging to take place on Friday night on Instagram, or Wednesday night before the show with no one else standing next to us.
And Tim, that's why we as judges, as insiders of bodybuilders, we are very conservative. We tend to tell people, I don't believe it until I see it on stage, right? These guys, they have to prove this year. They have to prove they've gained size and they can go against guys like Nick Walker. You don't have to be as big as Nick Walker, but you need to have enough size so that now we're starting at your conditioning, we're starting to look at your lines and say, yes, he beats Nick Walker on those criteria. And one of the worst comparisons for these guys, his name is Hunter Labrada, because Hunter Labrada is kind of a hybrid. He has a small waist, he has the lines and the size. So these guys are going to have to get bigger.
So we always talk about it, the back, insertion, size, thickness, hamstring. Walk us through each of these guys, Chris.
Well, as you see, the The lower lat insertions come down nice with Rafael. We can use a little bit more the teres minors and majors.
Google that, kids.
Rhomboid area. All this can improve. And even in the posing, you see how Reagan Grimes turns his head to the side. He's taking full advantage of his trapezius muscle that links up into the base of his skull. That's what you want to do. You want to turn your head to the side. Rafael's not taking advantage of that. So some of these things is not even what they're doing, is how they're actually presenting their physiques. If you present your physique as a top-notch guy, like you could even turn Rafael's wrist to the left and to the right more so.
A little pop in the
buys. And that's going to get a bit more pop in the buys.
Yeah.
You know, a little bit, don't be too lazy with the foot. Regan Grimes is way up on his toes there and taking full advantage of his calves. But also Rafael right here is a little bit lazy in that little pose right there. And a lot of guys are really dominant, you know, pulling these back double biceps. You know, they're crunching in, they're coming out. But you also got to get that, it's almost like a combination of a lat spread and a back double bicep at the same time. You got to take full advantage of the width of what you have in your physique.
Now, previous episode, we saw the lat spreads of Brandon Curry and Big Ramy. And you look at, I know it's not a lat spread, but you look at the thickness and the width. And you're saying taking advantage of those. These guys have a couple years before they're even going to be close. Go back to the gym, don't be seen, wear the sweatshirt and the hoodie, listen to their, you know, motivation, and put on some thickness and some width.
Yes, a lot of it's going to come with the intensity they bring in the gym. You got to have intensity. A lot of people think they're intense by training with big weights, and that's intensity. Intensity is more, it's a mind-muscle connection. A lot of people talk mind-muscle connection all across the board, but I don't see a lot of it really happening.
So, Tarek, you're looking at this side, you know, again, pretty, but at that level, at Olympia stage level, what are we looking at with the side shots?
They're missing beef. It's a lack of top sirloin.
Where's
on top.
the beef?
The beef needs to go to their chest. The beef needs to go on their shoulders. There's a lack of top sirloin on those areas. They need to eat a lot and train heavy. And like Chris said, have the intensity. They are amazing genetically, but they're not going to make it until they get bigger. We need more beef on that frame.
Now, I'm looking at some spots, you know, compared to even Ian or Andrew Jacked. I mean, he just looks like, and I hate to even make this comparison, it looks pro to college football level when you look at a star player.
That's a good point. Talking about Andrew Jacked, he won the Texas Pro. When he comes to the side, his chest, his shoulders, his biceps is full. If he's between these two guys, he's going to beat them. And that's a guy who's making his pro debut. Now imagine if you put Andrew Jack, Nick Walker, and Big Ramy between these two guys. We're talking about a huge discrepancy. These guys need to put on a lot of beef, and they need to be conditioned to crack the top 10.
Which one of these guys is already qualified for the Olympia this year?
Both.
Both.
Okay, but let's say we're talking about knee beef. These guys actually put on a lot of size already. They actually improved so much already, and I know they're working on it so much in the off season to get better. I just want to see it transferred from the off season and show us on the stage.
I'm confident that at least maybe one of them can crack the top 10 or make some noise. I know Rafael personally, he won 2 pro shows. Reagan won in Egypt. I believe one of them will surprise us. I don't know which.
I'm a big fan of Reagan's overall look. Big fan, have been. But I do find it hard going from division to division when you're that close to the weight. Is it, I mean, maybe there's nothing left to cut. Maybe you've outgrown your division, but then that just tells you got a couple years before you. There's a thing for me about once you get a pro card, you want to step on stage as a pro, but there's another thing at this level where you got to step hard and step high and be that guy that can stand next to the mass monsters without getting buried.
But Tim, you mentioned a good point. They got a couple years. Yes, but guess who else has a couple years? Andrew Jacked, Blessing Awadibu, Nick Walker, Hunter Labrada. They all got a couple years. So these guys have to look at some of these young guys and say, hey, we're behind on the muscular development. Now, in terms of lines, These guys are impeccable. Their physiques are beautiful. Rafael Brandao, he has the quads. His lines are impeccable. Reagan has the same look. We're missing top sirloin, prime choice.
Yes, I agree with Tarek. These guys are the muscles are popping. I think the 90s are back in bodybuilding. I think these guys are coming in with, got the right coaching. Keep tinkering with the posing. The posing's going to really put them over the top, I think.
Is packing on the beef the hard part or the easy part, Chris?
That's the hard part for a lot of people. Because it's hard to eat sometimes when you redundantly eating the same times, the same type of meals and everything like that. But that's where the heart comes in. That's where the mind comes in. That's going to separate the first and the second.
I've been with a lot of those guys off season, and just the head is down at food time. Eat, don't talk to me. I don't want to deal with you right now. I'm eating meal 8.
Concentrating
on not getting sick. Porking down 8, 10, 12 ounces of meat and 2 cups of rice or whatever your gurus got you on that week. It's just a ton of food. At this level, it's a straight ton.
Dexter Jackson is a great example. When Dexter Jackson retired, he goes, I'm just sick and tired of eating so much.
Yeah.
If you look at Dexter Jackson, 2008 when he won, in 2009 when he took 3rd place, that's exactly what these guys need to do. You are not going to be as big as Jay Cutler. And Dexter was never as big as Jay Cutler. But he was able to close the gap. He went from an aesthetically pleasing guy from a guy that had great genetics with mass. They don't need to be as big as Big Ramy, but they need to gain size and become Dexter Jackson.
I was emceeing the Dexter Jackson Classic in Jacksonville. We're out on an Outback, and just after that, we're having something to eat. And so, Dex, I'm Tigger. I'm always so energetic and happy. So, how are things? How are the kids? How's Gabe? Let me finish my steak, man. Do not talk to me while I'm eating. This is meal 72. I'm not even remotely hungry, and I got to get in these macros.
It's on automatic, just like Chris Cormier. He's asking for a sandwich every time we take a break. Unfortunately, he's not competing.
Hey, he's not eating a sandwich. Chris is having surf and turf. He's got Louboutin shoes on right now with red bottoms. Last night, 2 guys from Benihana's came in carrying stuff on their shoulders like they were feeding the Sultan of Brunei.
I got to eat, bro.
Lives. But I got to eat too, but there's a Chipotle nearby.
He had 2 lemonades. 2 lemonades.
Man eats like a king.
They were called pre-diabetic lemonades.
Ladies and gentlemen, I did 75 pro shows in my day. I am hungry and I want to eat. I couldn't wait. That was part of my motivation when I was 15, 16 years old, going to bed hungry was, when I retire, I'm going to eat.
Chris, you've retired 10, 15 years ago.
All right.
You've eaten all the meals you could have. Just put on a good example.
Well, as much as we like Chris's diet, we gotta wrap this show. We thank you so much for joining in. We've got more great primetime muscle covering the entire breadth and depth of the sport of bodybuilding, all the divisions. As always, big thanks to Tarek Elgindi, Chris Cormier, the real deal, and his incredibly good diet. And I'm Tim Wilkins. We'll see you next time.